Okay, are you recording?
Yes.
Callie?
You're good to go.
All right. Hello, welcome to this, I think it's the fifth presentation in our Fall 2025 Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar. My name is Brad Flam. I'm the Director of the Office of Sustainability, and our office is proud to co-sponsor this series along with our colleagues in the Office for Research and Sponsored Programs and the Sustainability Council's Scholarly and Creative Activities Committee. We have a full program this semester. If you're here joining us in Sykes, there are copies of the flyer and program for the whole semester up at the front. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can find the full program at the Office of Sustainability's website. I'm very happy to be welcoming today Professor Michael Burns. He spoke in not the very first semester of this series, but in the second semester of this series in spring of 2018. And we're thrilled to have him back. And so I will not take any more of his time, just ask you to join me in welcoming here today.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks everybody for showing up. Appreciate you. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So that was D'Angelo to get us started. Here's the slide to prove that I actually did this thing. This goes in my folder in your promotion. Thank you. A caveat and then an agreement. Okay. I have been completely stuck in the mud in terms of my academic writing. I have not felt like doing any of it at all. It feels like the least important thing to be doing right now, considering the state of the world, right? But I have been fulfilled in my work with United in Racism, doing the listening circles, doing the bicycle stuff, like practical things that I'm doing to help people like both think about how they move their bodies through space and also how we kind of reconnect our thinking and our feelings to be able to access our full minds, to start to develop a mindset as a species whereby we can start to reconnect with the planet and prepare our minds to do the work that's going to have to be done later on. Like, we got a mess on our hands, and just working with the same old ways of doing things isn't going to help it. We need an ontological shift in terms of the way we think about ourselves. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on here, okay? This talk is kind of a confession, and I admit that I'm formerly Catholic, so bear with me there. So it's been well enough inside of me for a while, and so I'm just deciding to go public, see what kind of response I get, whether it has legs, and I should go forward with this train of thought. So just bear with me. But if you want to be tough, tough love is welcome as well, okay? Later on, I'll ask you all to engage in some shared listening practices, okay? Pulling over from my UER work. Do so at your level of comfortability, right? Just engage to the level that you're comfortable. And please, if you're exchanging with someone and they share something personal, like just let it stay in that session. Is that okay? So we can all just be able to open up and be comfortable with each other. Okay, awesome. So Brad, Callie, I've attended a few of these talks over the years, and like I keep opening my mouth so you finally let me speak, right? So rather than go quietly, I'm going to go ahead and move towards my orientation of being polemical. All right, okay. So the first thing I'll say is like I am just so tired of versions of saving the world that do not engage in a critique of racial capitalism at minimum. And if we want to talk about racial capitalism more, I can bring that up. But like effectively, like there's no way, absolutely no way that this present version of the world will survive, let alone be pliable enough to be reshaped into ways where everybody's considered human, with ready access to economic, political, social, material resources for them to be fully human as they can be. Like this world just isn't going to get us there. This version of it won't work, right? So really, we're beyond the place of where a mere critique of racial capitalism is even enough, because the economic system is but one component of a Euro modernity, okay? And quiet as it's kept, socialism is also complicit in Euromodernity. Okay, so just so we're not thinking that socialism is a way out either. Okay, Euromodernity overdetermines what is knowable. It's effectively an ontology, right? Like ontologies give us a way to actually conceptualize what is possible in all the realm of what's possible. Epistemologies tell us what is knowable inside that ontological framework, right? So what we can know is actually ensconced within a capacity of way better, way larger possibilities. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, I'll use those words kind of loosely, but that's what I mean when I use them. Okay? Complicit with this version of Euromodernity is the overtaking of indigenous, African, and other modernities. And also, we've been forced to embody this conception of man that is against nature. Man versus nature is basically what the Western civilization project has forced onto the world, right? Is this complete separation or this contestation, this antagonism between man and the world. And this comes from Sylvia Wynter, right? And that man against nature is also against the non-human, against the non-rational, and those are signified historically by the indigenous, the Black, the woman, the immigrant, the queer, the disabled, the other. These are all the others that the man is against, right? In some form or another. Okay? And Euromodernity necessitates, I say almost mandates exclusion, othering, conquering, violence, extraction, destruction. It is a necessary component of the particular world order in which we inhabit. We have to have those things. Okay, I'm frustrated, right? You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So for all of us relatively benefiting from Euromodernity and the current global order, it's way past time for us to reconsider our relationship to this version of the world and try to get out of the game if we could, right? Which is not possible. And also to think intentionally about those of us who are necessarily oppressed by this arrangement. Right? Their oppression is indelible to the system. There is no such thing as disenfranchisement. Even the most distraught folks are a necessary component of the whole. They're necessary. That's the one thing we have to understand, right? We can't go back in time, and we'd still be waiting on empathy, I think. And if you want to take me up on that later in the Q&A, I'll go that way as well, but I don't have time right now, right? But there's considerations for us to take up now that might be useful, okay? So as we ease on down the road to this version of the world, to the end of this version of the world, like our always already compromised social arrangement will become more fascist. Our freedoms and rights will continue to be taken from us. We will capitulate, right? Or we'll fight to hold on to meager versions of liberty. And this passage is actually sponsored by Jimmy Kimmel, right? To me, right? Like we're fucking on Disney's side now. What the? Like, you see what I mean? Like, this is crazy. Like, we're siding with Disney over free speech. What? You know what I mean? This is okay, right? We're getting these scraps, right? Sometimes we'll fight, sometimes we'll win in ways that are necessary to sustain us. It's not to say that we give up and quit. Like, we have to engage in pragmatic struggle, right? But even as this version of freedom that we try to cling to can and does and will ultimately proffer the same violence, distraction, disparity, and extraction, right? Why not just turn away from it? Right? Turn away from this corrupted version of freedom that's being dangled in front of us and consider what else is possible in terms of the way we arrange ourselves. Okay? We know, even if deep down and we're not acknowledging it consciously, that the earth will eventually cease to tolerate this extractivist, destructive version of a world. Okay? And here I'm making the distinction between earth and world. Okay? Our world needs the earth, but the earth does not need our world. As a matter of fact, it will reject it, and it has already started the process, right? So we need to, what I call remember, okay? We need to remember that our true relationship with the planet is one of dependence. We cannot live without it. And so what does it mean to be in relationship with the earth and not the world? What does it mean to remember how we individually and collectively conceptualize ourselves as human animals, right? Because that's what we are. We're human animals in relation to non-human animals, as well as other sentient, non-sentient life, rock, soil, wind, water, fire. Okay? We are a being among beings. That's what we are fundamentally, right? So by way of reconsidering and dismantling, decoupling, severing our relationship to this version of the world, even if in just in terms of the way we think about ourselves in a relation, because that's the first step, right? We're not going to be able to do anything massively structural, but there's things that we can do in terms of conceptualizing ourselves to move towards a different ontology, right? So I'm going to take my cue from Dion Brand. So I've been loving her poetry lately, right? I do not write towards anything called justice. Like, I'm tired of arguing for justice. Justice is a mere legitimation. Justice legitimates the illegitimate system. Calls for justice, legitimate the illegitimate system, right? We have to be against tyranny and toward liberation. Right? Against tyranny and toward liberation. Right? And this is coming from the perspective of me being, like, you know, invested in the long Black freedom movement, and just understanding that there's no way that this particular version is ever going to recognize Black people as fully human as it exists. Like, it won't, and that transfers to all the other people that are basically being blackened in this historical moment, because that's what's happening. Right. The world is being blackened. More and more people are being treated the way that African heritage people have been treated historically, and since the beginning of this project. That's what's happening. That's what you're feeling. Okay? All right. So by way of considering, right, I already read that, right? Dion Brandt, right? So I propose that we face our collective and individual distresses accrued from this Euromodern life toward excising the traumas and the anxieties. It's not necessarily about feeling good. Okay, so when I'm talking about this shared listening, it's not just about getting a good feeling, right? It's about feeling to our fullest capacity, so we can access our full minds towards remembering our thinking and feeling with our minds on keeping the species alive. Okay. So I'll read a link here from Matthew Hoydek. He has this article, The Common Wind from Below. He writes, quote, for Subcommandant Marcos and the Zapatistas, the wind from above, right, he's talking about the global north, imposes itself as a globalizing force bent on reproducing what Arturo Escobar calls a one world world, a one world world. And this one world world seeks to suffocate difference under the weight of Western ways of being and knowing. He continues here, like, as Escobar explains, this Western-centric version of the world assumes that there is only one reality, one version of history, no alternative, all validated by Western science, colonialism, modernity, and underpinned by Cartesian dualities. So within this one world vision, all peoples and communities that do not fit within this reality, right, are deemed as subhuman and primed for not being saved, not being developed, being effaced, being erased. To counteract that, there's this wind from below, this rebellion of dignity that carries forth this new proposal for cultivating un mundo donde muchos mundos, a world where many worlds fit. So this is a different conception here that comes from indigenous ways of knowing, right? From mountains and forests, indigenous legacies that offer an alternative for the one world thesis, a speculative, pluriversal rhetoric, and radical aspiration. So more on the pluriverse here. Okay. Pluriversality as an ontological politics and framework. So again, this is another way to sort of think about our ontology to be distinct from the one world and the man as conceived as the particular component of that one world, right? There's a pluriversality as an ontological politics and framework that proposes a path for reclaiming dignity and transformational world building premised on the reality that alternatives to capitalism and modernity already exist. They existed before and they exist now, right? They're coming into being and making visible otherwise ways of being in, with, and of the world that resist colonial universalizing logics. So now that all sounds good, right? But how do we get there, right? I think that in some ways we're already there. I think ultimately, right? This is one of my favorite quotes from D'Angelo. The song was playing earlier, like till it's done, right? Ain't no question, do we have resources to rebuild? It's do we have the will, right? We have all the resources we need. It's just a matter of developing our will. So how do we get to the point where we can conjure enough collective will to actually make the changes that need to be made? Like the world doesn't have to be organized this way. Rather than parse out what aspects of your modernity are viable and which ones perpetuate death, which at the extremities is easy to see for anyone looking out with honest eyes, right? Like we can tell where our civilization is doing the most harm at the extremes, of course, right? We can ask a litmus question, right? That Sonia Sanchez and Fred Moten do, and I'm paraphrasing them. Like, how do it free us? Now we need the do and the does here. We need the do and the does, because the do and the does signify different sides of the veil of being and non-being, okay? How does it free us is a signification from the man side of the veil, from the Euromodern side of the veil that poses the question with regards to the epistemologies that are available there to ask the question up to the limits where they can't go anymore. How do it free us is the question that's asked from the non-human on the other side of the veil to move towards a capacity to pierce through that veil and then meet. Okay, so we have to take into account both perspectives. Does that make sense? Like, how do it free us? How do it free us? If you want to ask me about African American English, we could talk about that too. But this is a very particular way that you conjugate verbs, whereby you're simplifying things, right? There's a simplification where no complication is necessary. We can, I think, push on this a little bit and ask, like, who is the us or the we here, right? We are the ones who want to be free. Do you want to be free? Like, if you were invited to engage in another version of the world whereby there was no unnecessary suffering was completely alleviated, would you be willing to give up everything you had in order to live in that world? Well, I mean, that's the question we need to ask ourselves, right? Otherwise, there's no way we're going to get there. We got to start asking it now, right? I am, right? I am. So for our context, like, it's the Sylvia Wynter asked us to reimagine the humanities, right? An academy that's in the service of all human beings. Like, she's actually looking at interrogating the humanities at the fundamental level, right? And if you think about how the university as a project emerges, it's really just to undergird European expansionism. It's really just to undergird the imperial project. Ultimately, that's what it does, right? All the sort of justification, like, we get, you know, we get the rights of man, right? But did you know that David Hume actually had holdings in the East Africa Company? He's like making money off slave ships. So like the same ideas that like forward this idea of Western intellectualism and like rationality and so on and so forth are completely undergirded with colonialism. The same people are writing this stuff. How is that? We have to critique that. We have to critique that from the basis. Otherwise, there's no use in proffering this knowledge anymore. Like, it's not going to do us any good. It's just going to replicate the same thing over and over again, right? A good friend, Hannah Ashley was her name, asked me a question, right? How do we remake the university space that's useful for what's to come? Right? It's a scary, wonderful, necessary question that, for better or worse, entails a belief in the viability of an institution, as I was saying before, for it to do something that historically it has never done. Okay? We all know, or I hope you know, about the Harvard Slavery Project that actually got too deep and they wound up defunding it, Did you know that? They actually, like, they were finding out too much shit about Harvard and slavery, and they pulled the funding for the project. Okay, look at UPenn's relationship to West Philly. Look at Temple's relationship to North Philly. Look at Yale's relationship to New Haven, right? These are all undisturbed legacies of proffered disparity.
Georgetown University.
In every instance. And these all connect back to the colonial project. They all connect back to the capture of Africa, like all that, right? And now it's manifest right now. It's an unbroken legacy, right? Maya Angelou told us, when people tell you who they are, believe them. Okay? Do we apply the same thinking to institutions? Okay. Or is there a way to work from the unwieldiness of this struggle to bend it to our will some kind of way, right? We know and have firsthand experience of how power intentionally and strategically absorbs radicality into its structure in order to mute movements. Power will do that. We could think about counterinsurgencies as applied to like the COINTELPRO movement. But then we also have responses from, Moten and other folks too. Okay. Like this question comes up for me, like if I did not live with the illusion of a relatively secure university life and this cushy college town job, like I live in a college town, I ride my bike everywhere, like life is good. I've never made this much money in my life. Like I'm vastly succeeded with my parents' earning capacity, right? But if I didn't have this job, what would I be doing right now at this moment? Like it overdetermines it, like it keeps me from being in the street. It keeps me from investing in more radical, more progressive action because I'm at work, right? And that's intentional. That's intentional. Right? Like, how does this relative comfort impede a necessary discomfort that'll compel me to think more freely and do the things that need to be done? What's missing in terms of how we get more of us to look up and see that the sky was falling? It is really that from my relative position in the academy, the sky's not really falling, or at least it's not falling over here yet. Right? That's the sort of attitude we're taking, right? But the sky literally falls elsewhere, right? It literally falls elsewhere. What are the responses? Have you seen this? Okay, this is Ahmed Abu Amsha. He's a teacher at the Edward Said National Conservatory of Music, Gaza. Okay, he still gives lessons. He's still giving music lessons. He teaches vocal students how to harmonize with the incessant buzz of the drums. Okay, the drones are constant. The drones are there 24/7, and he conducts music class by teaching them how to harmonize with the drone buzz. Okay, so they sing like there's a lot of drones today. Woe to the oppressor, woe to him from God. Right. His students and him take what's intended by the IFO as a threat of surveillance and violence, and they turn it into music. How are the minds of these young students influenced by this beautiful show of defiance? How does this practice, rooted in joy and connection in the context of duress, challenge the chemistry of their brains and their bodies? What alteration in the cortisol levels? What about their understanding of what's ontologically possible, or even like their willingness to live? Right? Fundamentally changed. When looking for evidence of human evolution, it's crucial to consider experiences like these, right, of human beings living in the most precarious situations. They are the ones among us who will forward species survival. We are out of shape for that. It's in these most vulnerable situations that human beings will react and respond to harm in ways that will somehow see them through to another iteration of themselves. Author Daniel Black has this novel called The Coming, and he offers an account of captured Africans' experience in the belly of the slave ship, right? And he offers this really poignant example of how a people can emerge from the most depraved situations. Ta-Nehisi Coates says, they made us into a race, we made ourselves into a people. Right? And this is just to give you, this is, yeah, you too. Yeah. Right. So if we're thinking about drones buzzing over children's head and the impact that it has on them, think about the intergenerational impact on this. Like, this is like, I'm fourth generation out of slavery. Like, this is at the genetic level, this is still in me, right? Like, there's some cells in me that actually remember this. Like, Black's account reminds us, right? Prior to encounters with Europeans, there was no collective sense of Blackness among African heritage people. Black is an identity that is foisted upon African heritage people. Okay? There was a spectrum of cultural experiences, ways of knowing and being, and it was through this crucible of captivity and enslavement that the very idea of Blackness was formed. Okay? And while in the most obvious way, this collective identity is understood in terms of like slavery and in flesh memory, right? There's also this font of past, present, and future emergent ways of knowing that when accessed under duress, are really kind of a source of sustenance, right? It's part of the reason I'm kind of feeling like I'm in the eye of the storm a little bit, because like I remember, like for Black people, this is still like really like the best it's ever been. You know what I mean? Like, you got to think about that. Y'all are like the most accessible white people Black people have ever had had the fortune of knowing. Seriously, right? And y'all are freaking the fuck out, right?
Yeah.
See, ontologies, right? Okay. But the thing is that even though I talk about the ways that I could be impacted epigenetically, like European heritage folks are also impacted epigenetically. We are all descendants of Europe. All of us. You carry latent trauma from it too. Okay? We are also all ancestors already. Okay. And I'll return to this, but Olufemi Table talks about like that. That's a way to sort of think about our positionality right now. Like, we're already ancestors. It's our job to be able to like hand it off. We don't have to do everything. Okay. But there's some fundamental work that we can start to do now that's going to help us down the line with regards to like reconceptualizing what it means to be a human being and what human being means. Right. A mutuality can emerge in these situations to offer a possibility of recognizing that the very humanity of another in whom we share such a traumatic experience can forge togetherness and shared identity. Something happens to the ontological possibility in those situations. So deprivation is also a location of possibility. Okay. There's a kind of adaptation in spaces of depravity, whereby a person's meaning making is reimagined, rearticulated. In terms of African heritage people, again, think of music that extends really back to Africa, right? That you can't, everything got taken away except for people's memory of rhythms, right? And so we have blues, we have jazz, we have folk, we have rock, we have hip hop culture. Like, these are the things that made it through, right? And so the idea of Blackness itself can be extended to represent a space of evolution, adaptation, reimagination. It is. It is. Of late, when I encounter this neoliberal hand-wringing that I'm seeing a lot of my colleagues go through, right? I'm like, welcome to the party. Look at the way Black people have responded. You know what I mean? Like, historically, like, the response has been pretty positive for the most part. You're gonna be all right. I come from the other side of the veil to tell you. Right? The species is always already evolving. The human species is already revolving. Like, the human animal is not distinct from other living species in that regard. Okay. The capacity to evolve and adapt is on display. But it's not so much in our collective ability to develop more extractive technologies to take from the earth. That's a lot of times when we think about human advancement, that's where we go, right? What more can we get from the earth, right? But our evolutionary capacity is more visible in our ability to adapt to that violence of extraction. Like those that can adapt to the violence of the extraction are the ones that actually do evolution. Just a couple examples. You follow this guy, Nature Jab? He has figured out a way to take plastic and turn it back into fuel with zero waste. You can take plastic, grind it up. He's developed a machine and it will go through the process and it will turn back into petroleum. And you can turn it into fuel. This sister in Kenya started a company to make bricks out of plastic. So whereas those of us uncritically beholden to Euromodernity are conditioned to look at apex primates among us, right? The apex primates is what I call them, right? For what appear to be advancements, right? But effectively in practice, they're kind of like psyops or gaslighting presented as advancements. Artificial intelligence is the biggest case in point. Like we're being gaslit over this being a technological. Sorry. right. The most oppressed and the most forgotten will constantly adapt to the world, resultant of the Euromodern empire, right? And they're going to exemplify the responses that signal human evolution. Look to the refugees of war and climate change. Look to the migrants from unlivable knowns to take on an unknown in order to live. Look to the ones who are practicing making a way out of no way. The nadir is where the human animal evolves. It is from those places of precarity without the illusion of stability wherein human beings evolve the most. So inside the academy, we're faced with a different set of stimuli, right? The state is turning more overtly fascist, right? Further corrupting an already corrupt political system, subverting international law, violating established constitutional protections, encouraging and supporting violence among the population, bolstering a secret police force, neglecting those most in need. I can keep going, right? But even with all that, like we have our own evolution to contend with, right? Fanon always helps me, but he helps me particularly in this moment, right? He says that I belong irreducibly to my time, and it is for my own time that I should live. Please. Hand wringing ceases, okay? Okay. All right. Okay, right. Our awareness only does us good if it helps us in the now. Like we are in it and of it. We bear witness to the violence carried out by man from our place within his ranks. We have space-time to respond rather than react, right? And I make the distinction, right? The reaction is under duress, the response is under presence and contemplation, right? Ours is a different but no less important site of human evolution, right? Olufemi Tewo, who I referenced earlier, right, offers that our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to remember that we are ancestors, right? We need to remember what human being needs at this juncture, and we need to act accordingly. Okay? All right. That's the talk portion. Now we'll get to the other part, okay? I want to get you while you kind of supple a little bit, so we'll have question and answer at the end altogether, okay? Hopefully you got some things to think about, and hopefully some feelings came up. That's the point, okay? So let's do some shared listening. Okay, let's do some shared listening. So I want you to think about this question. What is your idea of a world where everyone belongs? Like I want you to really seriously think about it. Right? Think about what would you need if you're making the world and everybody belongs, what has to happen first? What's something that you just can't do without? Okay. If we're even, let's go ahead. Are you okay to do this? Just get into pairs, pair up with someone. And then, can you put the people in the, can you put them in a breakout? Yeah. Are
You
there-
want me to stop recording now?
Yeah, that's the part where I told you. Yeah.